So we've been witnessing all these tectonic changes because of the new revolutionary technologies coming up and existing now. And now we're going to touch a very sensitive topic of what's going to happen with the governments and political systems in light of these changes. And I would like to welcome on stage our honorary speakers, representatives of three amazing countries, Estonia, Israel, and Mexico, to talk on how countries are going to adapt to these new revolutionary changes. Are they going to lose their primary function, or are they going to change? And the moderator of our Fireside Chat is Tsao, our longtime friend and supporter of a SVOD conference. Andy has 20 years experience in banking business. He is a managing director at the Global Gateway of Silicon Valley Bank. Andy manages SVB's relationships with venture capital firms and private equity firms outside of the United States, but also helping startups from the emerging countries who wish to work here in the Silicon Valley or overall in the United States. All right, we're almost set. Welcome on stage.
Thank you, Anna.
Guys?
Second, they told me. Exactly.
I think I'm taking the right. What?
No, I'm good. It's good here. Sure.
Well, thank you, Anna. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Andy Tsao. I'm a managing director at Silicon Valley Bank, and on behalf of the bank, I'm very excited again to be a partner here with Anna, Stas, and the entire team for another Silicon Valley Open Doors conference. In my role, as Anna kind of touched upon in her introduction, I've had the opportunity to really look at new and emerging technology hubs around the world doing business development on behalf of the bank. And in that context, I have had the opportunity to travel regularly to Israel and in fact helped to set up our business there back in the late 2000s. In the last few years, I've had the opportunity to travel to the technology centers of Mexico, whether it's Mexico City, or Guadalajara or Monterrey. And finally, while I haven't had the opportunity, Kaspar, to get to Estonia yet, I have met your e-resident, Tim Draper.
You can do it digitally now.
Oh, that's right, and as well as, had the opportunity to meet Nicholas Enstrom, who certainly helped put Estonia on the map from a technology and innovation perspective with his Estonian co-founders. So what we're going to do in this panel discussion over the course of the next 25, 30 minutes or so is to really have that discussion on the importance of the tech and innovation sectors within each of these regions, to talk about how these governments are helping to foster those innovation ecosystems, and as well as how are they embracing the innovation, technology, and perhaps the disruption that comes with those changes as they think of governing within their countries. But I would like to start with, since Tim kind of put the challenge out there for you guys to really respond, is the thesis of his talk was, how do you compete as governments for us, for the folks in the audience? And I think, given that we have, maybe Kaspar, since Tim is an e-resident, and he talked specifically about your program. Maybe we can kick things off with, how do you compete for us, and give us some details behind how you're doing that through the e-residency program.
Yeah, thanks. Hi everyone, yes, my name is Kaspar, and I guess Tim did quite good intro for our things. So 4 years ago we decided at government level that we want to become borderless, because we were like sick of this, how nations are like becoming more conservative and more bordered everywhere, and we wanted to do something different. And for the millennia age people, especially the digital nomads, the freelancers, we decided we want to become a platform for nation for them. So we became borderless. Everyone became digital citizens. Now it's in exponential growth rate. So every year we have more digital citizens than last year's together, which shows that after like some years we have more e-residents than citizens, and I estimate that after 7-8 years it's our major source of income for our nation. Because as you've been like 1.2 million nation, we have only 1.2 million citizens in Estonia, you kind of need to do something differently to compete with Israel, to compete with the US in that level. Now we have kind of unlimited amount of people who can work for us, who can be part of us. We know that no one wants to physically come to Estonia as much as they would like to come to beautiful other nations, but we don't need in today's world physical immigration to grow. We can have it digitally. People subscribing to e-residence, what they do today is they establish corporation in the EU, they establish bank account, they digitally do all the taxation, administration matters, and it costs like just 30-40 euros per month to have everything set up. And it just works. You can remotely manage and run the company today. After some years, we will introduce physical movement, digital nomad visa, for example, healthcare and other topics like also Tim introduced. So for us, it totally changed what our nation is, to become a borderless nation serving the whole humanity, not only Estonian citizens.
Well, maybe, Shlomi, if you can respond to that notion of a borderless government versus how we look at traditional borders from an Israel perspective.
Thank you, Andy. And great to be here this morning. And the staff, thank you for the invitation. I want to take you a little bit back to the beginning of the State of Israel and to look at how Israel was created. It was created with a very centralized market. Everything was very centralized. Excuse me. And it was part of the necessity to build the state. Now, what we see since early 90s is a constant and gradual movement towards decentralization and deregulation, and the government basically creating better ecosystem for businesses, for investors, and moving away. In the 90s, and Andy asked me to talk about this, we started with, how many of you were in Israel or familiar with Israel since his business? Okay. So in the 90s, we started with a program called Yozma, which is initiative, which was a governmental program which built an ecosystem that supported and created the venture capital industry in Israel. And in the end of the 90s, we were the second to the US with venture capital industry. And the great thing is that the government took the risk upon itself and created a better environment for investors to start building the whole ecosystem. Add to that two components that happen in Israel. One is the big influx of the immigration from former Soviet Union, which brought a lot of talent. And two is basically a lot of military graduates, more in the technical world, that studied in what we call the technical high schools. And then they practiced in the military, left the military already with a profession that they could work be part of the workforce. So you had these three basically processes And plus, there was another one, which is, and I said, the necessity. So in a very early stage, the necessity was to feed the people in 48 and throughout the years. And this is why the Israeli agriculture got so entrepreneurship, became so entrepreneurial. The necessity later on moved to defense and to developing technical solutions for defense. Today, it's moving to the cyber, plus the other is the healthcare, or basically digital health, which is also supported a great deal by the government in order to provide a third solution or third field that will help the people to flourish.
Shlomi, certainly Israel is known as the startup nation. And as other nations aspire to build their tech and innovation sectors, Israel is seen as a role model. In terms of the YOSMA program and what you've done as a nation to develop the ecosystem, if you're giving advice to Gemi or Kaspar as they look to aspire to build their own tech industries, what has worked for Israel and what hasn't, and what would you advise them as they set forth to build their own tech industry?
I think what worked in Israel was listening to the industry and work with the industry, and also get the academy into this and combine the two together. So listening to the industry, to where the trends are going. Look, Israel has a mentality. Israel is an island in all senses, geographical, supplies, etc. So we need to rely on export and on external connection. Therefore, listening and feeling the beat of the industry, and then moving along with the industry, creating better environment. And this is what's happening in Israel in the past 20 years, more than even before. The government is leading more privatization, more moving away from the industry, less involvement, shrinking the government in order to allow the forces to work.
Gemi, turning to you, and I do want to get back to this notion of competing for talent and for citizens. And I know Mexico has introduced a startup visa program that talks a bit about how do you compete for us. And maybe you can tell us more about what's happening in Mexico from an innovation perspective as well as a startup visa.
Thank you very much, Andy. Very glad to be here. Well, yes, actually, we don't believe of competing with other nations, but with collaborating with other nations. And the notion of this tech visa that we launched in the Mexican consulate in San Francisco is about that. So if you work for an American company and you are from Russia, Israel, China, any part of the world, or you are American, and you want to go to Mexico, you can go to the Mexican consulate. We will issue a tech visa the same day. You only have to pay $36. And 30 days after you arrive to Mexico, the Mexican government will give you your Mexican green card. So it's not about competing, because what we want to do is that you work for an American company, you will be paid here in the US, you will pay your taxes here in the US, but we want to attract talent. So in Mexico, we have developed important hubs for technology as Guadalajara, even Puerto Vallarta. So who wouldn't want to be coding from the beach, having a nice margarita or something like that, and working for American companies here in the US. So that's the concept of collaborating. It's about quality life, it's about saving money. It's much more cheaper over there. And in Mexico, what we have done in the past years, in the past 5 years, is that we went from 40 million users of the internet to above 80 million users of the internet. We built a lot of infrastructure. We opened our telecom industry, so we have now competition that translated in a lot of investment in infrastructure for connectivity. We created a national institute for entrepreneurs. In the last 5 years, that institute has invested $2.5 billion in startups. So the only thing that you need is to have a Mexican partner, another entrepreneur, or maybe a Mexican or Mexican-American venture capital fund. And in the Mexican consulate, we are there for that, to be that bridge of connection with those guys that are seeking to have some investment in Mexico or some partnership with Mexico, and with these kind of visas, they can go over there and establish over there very easily.
Right. In a similar way to the way the Israeli government worked with Yozma to seed the venture capital ecosystem, in Mexico, the government has created some funding mechanisms as well, whether it's INADEM or Fondo de Fondos, in terms of creating a venture capital industry. How has that experience been so far? And it seems like the first generation of kind of breakout Mexican entrepreneurs are really starting to raise money here in the Silicon Valley. Do you have some?
Exactly. That's very interesting. That's institutional investment. INADEM, that is this National Institute for Entrepreneurs, the fund of funds of Mexico, also is investing a lot of money. We have a bank that is owned by the Mexican government that is called NAFIN, that is investing a lot of money also. But what is very interesting for the Silicon Valley is that in Mexico, there's a lot of wealth, a lot of families are seeking to do new investments. So we can see now a lot of funds of private equity, venture capital funds, family offices. So if you want to explore a possibility to do a match in investment or maybe a partnership with another venture capital or something like that, we can help you in the Mexican consulate because that's part of our job to connect. We know pretty well what these funds and family offices are looking for, so we can help to do a good match to have a co-investment or something like that. So I think that it's very interesting what is going on because each week I receive different new venture capital funds from Mexico that want to seek opportunities here in the Silicon Valley.
Fantastic. I also want to give the panel a chance, each of you, to respond to Tim's discussion around crypto. And how, obviously, on one hand, Tim talks about the freedom from fiat currencies, but obviously governments need to control their currencies to some degree, both from a monetary and fiscal policy as well as security and otherwise. So how are each of your countries thinking of crypto, both from a regulation perspective on one hand and as well as the technology and innovation that comes with it?
Yeah. So all in all, it's cool to really damage fiat currency, but all in all, euro currency, we are quite happy with that, so we don't want to eliminate euro fiat currency. It has very many positive sides. But we do prepare to become an ICO nation, so we have guidelines how to build your own ICOs. And also next summer, this summer, I'm going to launch community platform for e-residents where they can start exchanging value, and I'm planning to put EST coins there so that it would be a way for them inside that ecosystem of e-residency to exchange value, like Tim had the example of games where you can buy swords and stuff like that. So you can buy S-coins and exchange value in that. And then basically you don't need these international payments and all the KYC requirements inside that ecosystem. And launching S-coins, which is like 2-3 year project, is definitely how we try to embrace this industry.
Gemi, I saw you raise your hand when Tim said, who has crypto? So.
Yeah, I am a crypto investor myself. And I mean, you're in the Silicon Valley, you have to do that, right? So I opened my account in Coinbase and everything. I asked him earlier if this was going to get better, and of course he said yes, and I believe him, so let's see what happens. But I also shared with Tim earlier that Mexico is one of the few countries that has now a fintech law. And it's a fintech law that is very friendly to promote ICOs and to have a very nice regulation so that everybody can be confident of investing in this kind of cryptocurrency opportunities. So we feel very good about it. The Secretary of Finance 2 years ago came to talk to the venture capital industry. He understood pretty well that we needed something like that, so we started working on it. And just 1 month ago, the Mexican president issued the fintech law in Mexico.
Fantastic. Kaspar, I think you wanted to respond to that.
Perhaps. I just want to say that I think what's interesting in this, because we have US versus other world discussion here, is that I see really huge opportunity for other nations and Europe also especially to find the second chance for their entrepreneurs, that not all entrepreneurs nowadays don't have to come to Silicon Valley, although it's great to come here and have the relations, but you can establish yourself everywhere. You can be location dependent. And then embrace, your nation should, of course, then embrace crypto more than the US does. And you are the community who can help your nations to do that, because the civil servants themselves perhaps don't know everything, how to build that. Just a few comments that this is an opportunity for us who is not part of the US ecosystem, for second chance by the cards.
Well, Shlomi, we had talked a little bit about crypto, and you know, there is downside risk to crypto also from a government view. And I know we at the bank are trying to get our arms around the innovation, but we're also conservative around the risk and compliance. How is Israel looking at crypto today?
I think the attitude in Israel yet is more on the traditional side of things, especially from central bank and from the treasury. It doesn't say that we're not examining it, but it's still on the traditional side. You know, I was listening to Tim. It's fascinating. I mean, this is how people build future, and this is how people look into the horizon. But I think at the same time, governments somehow still carry responsibility for the citizens. And one of the challenges challenge to overcome is how can you assure that tomorrow I'm not going to invest all my money there, everything is going to collapse, I'm going to be at the age of 67 and then lose all my money, and who's going to take care of me? So where's the responsibility versus the horizon, or who carries responsibility and who carries the risk? And it's a very not only investor's question, but it's also an ethical question. So if you allow it, it's also an ethical question, but then who carries the two sides? So that's part of it. So I think we're still on the traditional side, and it's going to take time. I don't think we're going to be the first one to adopt this, because of also Israel's more special situation in terms of financial institutions.
So as your governments are looking at some of the innovation that technology is providing, and Gemi, we were talking about, for example, how pollution is a factor in Mexico City, given its size and its scale, and that for those of you who travel there, the congestion really can be quite terrible. What are some of the things that Mexico is thinking, or whether it's at the state or city level or federal level, in terms of adopting technologies to create a smarter city and a better experience for its citizens? Thank
you. Yes, of course, Mexico City is a small city of 20 million people, so it's a little bit crowded. So, of course, if any of you is working in anything that has to do with clean energy, that has to do with storage, transport, clean energy, managed better clean energy, Mexico is a big opportunity. Not only Mexico City, but we have also a huge market here in the US that we can sell energy to the US now. Now we have an open market in energy. So of those kind of solutions, or if you're a venture capital and you're investing in a startup that is working in these kind of things, you should look to Mexico, because that's a good opportunity. And just to tell you 2 or 3 more about that it's important in Mexico, that it's industries that are growing very, very fast, is tourism. We went in the past 5 years from number 15 in the world to number 6, from 23 million international visitors to 40 million international visitors. So that's a big thing. It's going to still growing. 90% of our visitors only go to 4 places. You can imagine Cabo, Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, and Mexico City. So we have the rest of the country to grow. So we really think that we're going to be in the 5th place in the following years. And the other one is, of course, logistics. We are a bridge between the two North and South America, the 2 oceans. So logistics is a big thing in Mexico also to invest. And I will say, I could see maybe 2 or 3 things. FinTech is very important. We have a huge cash industry. So if you're thinking about solutions, FinTech solutions for cash, I think that Latin American markets are very important. And the other one is health, particularly things that have to do with diabetes. Unfortunately, we have a very good problem into that. So if you're investing in something like that, we will be very interested to support you to get to Mexico, because we want to find those solutions. And it's an important market because we're part of this Pacific Alliance, that if you invest in Mexico, it's pretty easy to go to Colombia, Peru, and Chile, so it's a good market.
Shlomi, same question for you. As such an innovative country, what is the government adopting in terms of providing a better user experience for its citizens?
Well, first of all, compared to 20 million in one city, we have about 8.5 million in the whole country. So we're talking about different proportions and different needs. And naturally, when you have a small country versus a big country, we have a very dense population versus a very dispersed population, that creates different needs. But there was actually one component which I wanted to add to the beginning to your first question. When we talk about this whole support of the technical, let's say, manpower that happened in Israel, and the creation of the VC, what happened is that the drawing attracting about 300 multinational companies, most of them for R&D into Israel. And one supports the other. So you have all this young manpower that is coming out of the military with a lot of knowledge. You have companies, venture capitals investing in these companies. You have the multinationals creating additional, stronger ecosystem by actually opening accelerators, being part of them, etc. And then you have a booming industry which the innovation goes into every corner. So just in the retail business, we have about 250 companies that were created in the past couple of years. Every year, there are about 500 new companies opening only just in a short street between Haifa and Tel Aviv. So that's whole supporting each other and creating a better atmosphere. In terms of the government creating a better again, it is more concentrated in certain places like Tel Aviv, which are more advanced, but others trying to follow suit on this too.
Terrific. Kaspar, any thoughts on that? Obviously, the e-Residency program is very innovative. Other technologies that Estonia is embracing?
So one thing we do now is we moved our nation to cloud, meaning that we have data embassies, meaning that even without physical land, all our services would keep up and running, and we can still vote online, we can still pay taxes, have parliament elections, everything done online. And next to that, what we're building now is AI-based governance, so that to kind of see humans are doing so many mistakes, and in governance especially. You have so much of data, and you need to decide, and there are those political elections coming all the time, and then you want to do populist kind of moves there. And now basically there should be enough data for e-governance also to start doing decisions itself. For example, where the lower taxes in which region, on what matters, what foreign workforce we need in next coming years, and that to be real time, so that every day we can monitor how the government is doing and do decisions based on that. So now we have some pilots on that matter that actually to eliminate most of the governance itself.
Very good. Well, turning now perhaps to the last question before we open it up for a question or two from the audience, is sort of the pending, obviously innovation on one hand gives us amazing new tools to be able to further society. On the other hand, BBC report estimates that over 800 million jobs could be potentially lost by 2030 based on technologies like artificial intelligence and autonomous cars, et cetera. How are you thinking about the potential dislocation as we go through this transition over the coming years, decades? Is Norway potentially a model where you need to create more of a safety net, or are there programs that we need to engage in to retrain those who don't have those skills? I would love to hear each of you give us some insight there.
Yes. 7 years ago, I was part of the program called, I don't know what was it called, but we trained each Estonian how to do digital signatures, how to use your ID card. We trained 15-20% of Estonians, and then they trained their parents, etc. So we like physically went to people and trained how to become a digital citizen. So we see the same waves are coming now, like if the job market is going to change and further things are automated, then we will just have this national training mechanism. And of course, for us, it's a bit easier because we are 1.2 million people compared to big nations, but training has given us that success that it's not only that young people use technology, elder people actually vote more online because it's hassle to go to voting booth, etc. And then elder people can do everything at home. And training works if it's like continuous and invested a lot into that.
Well, we are certainly very worried about that, especially in AgTech. I love to say that all the great wines of California are also Mexican wines because we are the ones that are in the fields. And so we feel very proud about all of them. And now, that's in the wine country, but in the Central Valleys, we have hundreds of thousands of Mexicans working in the fields. So as many other things, that's a shared problem with the US and with California. So what is going to happen with all of those hundreds of thousands of workers that are in the agricultural industry? So I would love to hear some ideas and answers because we know that that is going to be a problem not only for Mexico, but for the US and California especially. So I don't have an answer. We do have a very important problem in front.
So in the case of Israel, I think the whole tendency to educate people for technology usage is very high. So whether it's in agriculture, whether it's any other field. And I think we're among the highest nations of mobile users and computer users, et cetera. So there is a very big tendency towards that. And with a generation that basically that it's harder, there is a lot of educational program for this kind of issue. So to try and solve it, to try and direct the whole educational direction into technology.
Absolutely. Okay, with that,
I don't think we have
don't
time for questions. I'm sorry.
Okay, well then please
But
join me.
obviously, if you have questions to our speakers, I hope they will stay and you have access to them, right?
Yep.
Absolutely, and please join me in thanking our very esteemed panel here for their comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.